Hi everyone, thanks for joining me again. I'm planning today to do a bit of macro shooting. I've been seeing a lot of macro type of stuff lately that I want to shoot, so I was thinking maybe today is the day. Some clouds in the sky, so the light is not too harsh. I've brought out the heavy duty macro lens, a Canon MPE-65 that'll give me up to 5 times magnification. So I'm going to be shooting with that on a Sony camera actually. So please come along for the walk and let's see what we can find. Well, I've reached the first location that I want to try and shoot. Basically a rock formation against the side of a hill with a lot of lichens on it, very interesting lichens. Now I've taken photos of these before, but not with a real macro lens. So I'm going to try and shoot some high magnification today. Let me just show you what I'm looking at. See, what we have here is a bunch of rock formations, and specifically what I'm looking at the moment is this one over here with some rather interesting lichens on it, and you can see the camera set up over there. It's a Sony camera with a Canon lens on it, the very dedicated Canon MPE-65 macro lens. That's actually fitted on a rail for focusing purposes. So let me see if I can find something to capture here. The composition I quite like. As you'll see, this is about let me have a look, about a 3 times magnification of the lichen on the rock, the greyish lichen, with a bit of the reddish lichen or the orange lichen in between on the rock as well. As you can see, the depth of field is very shallow as I focus through the stack. Probably going to need to take at least about 15 or 20 images here, but let me shoot it and see what I can do with it. I like the composition, though I'm not perfectly happy with it. I actually would have preferred the lines to be more diagonal. I actually think I prefer this slightly more. Let's see what we can make with this, but I need to find a different composition. First I just want to, for technical reasons, do a stack to see what that's going to look like. Well, I've done the first cycle, or the first image. I need to do quite a bit of stacking. I think I've taken about 25 images here, and that's only at 1 time magnification, f16. But I always end up taking a few more images rather than missing one, because often you end up with the very first or the very last on either side of the focus stack. You have something out of focus, and that kind of spoils the whole image for me. But yes, some really interesting subjects here on this one rock. You can spend quite a bit of time on this one rock. So I'm going to be shooting a few other objects here as well. But I think the lichens at the moment are my main aim here. Yeah, you can see what I'm actually shooting on the rock. the light greenish lichen, and then there's also the grayish one that I want to shoot just now, but I just need to find a nice composition with a reddish rock behind it. I think, of course, the disadvantage of this lens being 65mm is you have to get really close. So with a rock this low down on the ground, it is quite uncomfortable. But hey, we do it for the love of photography, eh? Here's another composition I like. I like the textures, specifically from the bottom left hand side, the very fine granular textures that becomes more like a lava flow towards the middle of the image, and then the left hand side got the more orangey brownish colors. As you see, as I focus through the stack, you'll see it all coming into focus. I would have liked it to be slightly more from corner to corner, and maybe I'll see if I can organize that. It's just very uncomfortable, the position that the rock is in, but that might make for a better abstract composition. I'm going to be investigating the rocks a bit more. I managed to get 1 or 2 compositions already here. You can see the stuff that I shot down here. Lots of detail. This particular lens, the MPE-65, is quite a painful thing to work with because of the way you focus with a focus rack or the rail, and how you change magnification by actually changing the, let's call it almost the focal length. But very rewarding if you get it right. I see around you there's some more beautiful lichen on some of these rocks. It's quite nice, but I need to find another composition somewhere. I know earlier on I was looking at this here with the different circles, colonies growing. Maybe I can work something out here. It's quite beautiful. I would have actually preferred if this was a bit wet. The colors are a lot more vibrant when it gets wet. You can see here some of the lichens are actually growing on some quartz, so it's a nice white background. But let me look around if I can find another composition around here. And in between there's a cactus peeking out as well. Of course, this whole area is quite beautiful. As you see, there's a shepherd's tree, but yes, it's the wrong time of day for normal landscape work. It's almost about it's 11 o'clock in the morning, approaching 11 o'clock in the morning, so not ideal conditions for normal shoot, but the clouds are giving me some nice soft light, which is perfect for macro work. This is more the composition I was looking at, with a diagonal from the bottom left towards the top right, and a more balanced image as well between the light lichen and the rock with a slight orange on it. I think this is really what I was looking at. So I'm going to capture this, probably about a 15 stack as well, 1/60th of a second, and I'll be shooting it at probably f14. Let's see what the result is. the scene I like. I think primarily what I like here is the fact that okay, we're only seeing it in 16:9 here, but it forms a nice line from the bottom right, curves up towards the top center, and then goes down towards the left hand side again. I think I need to slightly recompose it to get that slightly more centered, something like that. Also will be about a 20 image stack. I'm running at about 2.5 times magnification here, but let's see if I can get a nice result with this one. I really think this has potential as well. Some lichen growing on a tree here, beautiful. But my problem is there's a bit of wind, so every time even the tiniest movement in the tree will mess up the image. I'm shooting at about 2.5 to 3 times magnification, but it's not going to work. I'm going to need a wind still day for this one. But as you can see, really interesting patterns, 2 different shades or colors of lichen. The whitish grayish one with a tinge of blue, and then the yellow orangey one, or green yellow I should say. Nice patterns between the two of them, but I think I'm going to have to settle for shooting it in another day. And as I say it, the wind drops completely. Let me try again, 3rd time lucky. Well, yeah, I found another composition I quite like, but yes, as you can see, it's moving. It's actually on a tree, some green orangey lichen on the side of the tree. But I think this might be a problem. There's quite a bit of wind now, and I think that's going to kill it in terms of getting a solid photo, because at relatively low shutter speeds and the need to stack, I don't think it's going to work. But I can probably come back sometime when there's less wind. The wind is now picking up. It's that time of the day, so I'm afraid this one is not going to work. But as you can see, it's quite interesting colors and patterns here. You've got the blue grayish lichen at the back, and then the more yellow orangey one growing on top of that. There's a lot in the wind now. Let me quickly see if I can get a couple of shots off. Well, by now you've probably seen what I managed to capture. I was quite happy with the images of the lichen on the rock, the 2 different colors of lichen, actually 3 different colors, because there was like an orangey one, very fine one in the background as well. Unfortunately, the also very interesting lichens on the tree, I don't think I managed to capture that. There was just too much wind and movement on the tree. Every time I started to stack, when it was quiet, I got down to about 5 or 6 images, and that was it. Wind started blowing in, because I was running those at about a 1/4 of a second, something like that, and that's just, any movement would just spoil that. The MPE-65 is an absolutely gorgeous lens. The results are normally really wonderful, but the issue is it's a very technical lens, and it takes a lot of work to get a good image out of it. Everything's got to be absolutely right. Zero movement, lots of stacking, and you've got to get so close, so absolutely close to the object that you or to the subject that you're photographing, that it becomes almost an issue of obscuring your own light. I sometimes use that with a flash. I've got a macro flash that goes with it, but I actually prefer natural light. The colors are better, the shades, or the lack of shadows makes natural light like this just better. So hopefully I managed to get something. But yes, thanks for joining me for this little expedition. I think I need to come back after some rain. We had rain a few days ago, but the light wasn't right, and we had horrendous wind as well. So I'm going to have to wait for some point when that combination is right. But fortunately, it's relatively close to home, so it's not a problem. and I need to mark a couple of places, so next time I get here, even if it's wet or raining lightly, that I can go straight to the compositions that I'm looking for. So thanks for watching this video, much appreciated. If you liked it, please click like, and if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, please subscribe, so you'll see if there's anything new in the future. I'll definitely be doing another macro one soon after a bit of rain. We'll also have a lot of flowers that are starting to form, but maybe it won't be extreme macro like this. I'll use my normal Sigma 150 macro lens, not the very high magnifications. But it was a nice exercise today, and it was nice to get out. It's actually quite a beautiful day, and it's starting to warm up, so I'm having fun. I had some fun. Nice to get out. Thanks for joining. See you in the next video. Have a great time and stay safe. Well, hello everyone. Thanks for joining me on my channel again. Today I'm here in the Karoo, semi-desert part of South Africa. After some recent rains, we had quite a bit of rain. Well, I say quite a bit, about 25 millimeters a few days ago, after almost a 7-year drought. So I'm hoping to find some subjects this morning for my macro lens, maybe some flowers. Lots of little green plants popping up everywhere. So yeah, let's see what we can find today. Thanks for joining me again, and let's hope we can find something that's worth it. It's amazing how quickly it can get green in this area after some rain. Not much more than a week ago I was here in the same area, and it was just grey with almost nothing appeared to be alive, even though of course they were alive. A couple of the cacti started to bloom, but it was a very half-hearted effort on their side. But today, 3 or 4 days after the rain, there's green everywhere. The cactuses have lots of flowers, lots of little succulent plants everywhere popping up, even some grass is starting to grow. So this is really gorgeous. Just shows you how resilient nature is to something like a drought, specifically an area that is desert anyway, so most of the plants here are adapted. I'm hoping to find some macro shots. I did bring the macro lens, my trusty Sigma 150. So plants mostly, I would say, maybe some lichen. Yeah, if there's anything else, you will see it soon enough. Just look how green it is around here. I mean, look at this patch of grass. There's hardly ever grass in this area anyway. So yeah, this is quite gorgeous. I'm not sure if there'll be more rain soon, but if there is, it'll get even better. But at the moment, the plants are very thankful, and I'm sure so are the animals. I already saw a kudu, a mother and a child combination this morning on the way here, and quite a few mongoose. There seems to be a lot of mongoose around this area as well. So let's see if I can find any subject of interest that is worthwhile taking the lens cap off. Just look at this cactus flower. Actually, I think it's past the flower stage. I think this is actually the fruit stage. I think this is going to be my first subject. Let me set up the camera. I think this makes for a nice first subject. This cactus, what's called a Noordsveld cactus. It's gone now past flowering stage, and their little fruits or seeds on this plant. I love the colors, the what, almost burgundy red, fat little seeds. I wonder if they're edible. It doesn't look like anything is eaten on this one, but there's one just behind it that some animal took a chomp out of. So I think I'm going to shoot this probably at about, probably going to have to focus stack, maybe 3 or 4 photos. I'll shoot at about f14, ISO 100. It'll be around about I guess about a 50th of a second, and then let's see what we can get, if we can get some nice detail on that. At least there's very little wind today. The last time I came here to shoot macro, it was so windy I really had an issue. But you can see how much depth of field is needed as I work through the focus area. So yeah, I ended up taking about 4 shots, and yes, here's the image, if it did work out. This tiny little flower, a small little succulent plant. I'm not sure what it is, but it's got these tiny, very delicate little flowers on it. I think actually quite gorgeous. Again, I'm going to need to do some focus stacking. Shoot at f14, ISO 100, and about 1/25th of a second. There's a little breeze at the moment, but the light is also improving, so I think 1/25th of a second would be good enough if I just wait for a quiet little bit between the wind, bits of wind that I keep on pumping through. Probably just thermals in the area. Let me shoot it before the sun gets too harsh. Find a real interesting composition here. Here's another flower very similar to the previous one, just slightly less dark, slightly lighter flowers. I'm going to try and find a composition here that is pleasing to the eye. I don't think this particular one's going to work, but again, I'm going to need to stack a couple of images to get the depth of field right. Yes, I think I'm going to end up sticking to the landscape format. I'll probably end up cropping a bit, or maybe even crop it into a square just to get rid of some of the dead area on the left hand and a bit on the right hand side. I'm now on top of a little hill here. Just show you the area. See, there's a lot more green bits and pieces around than there were even a week or 2 ago. But still, it is still desert or semi-desert. And in the distance we're getting, it's a cloudy day, but the clouds are starting to break up. So soon it's going to be sunshine. It's going to get very hot, probably about I think the prediction was about 36 degrees Celsius, and it's relatively humid, so it's not going to be all that pleasant. So I need to shoot what I want to shoot and get it over and done with. Macro shoot for me would be complete shooting in this area anyway without a lichen shot or two. And look what I found on this rock. It's really orange lichen. It almost looks like rust on the rock, but it's definitely a lichen. So on the solid rock as a background, I think it'll also make for a nice 3D model or a 3D movie. I'm going to try and shoot enough images so that I can have enough depth of field that I can actually create a 3D a motion picture out of this. Let me shoot it before the sun gets too harsh, because the sun's just broken through the cloud. also found on the rock, inside a crack, diagonal across, bottom left to top right, there's something growing in there. Tiny little round balls, whitish, with what appears to be little holes in them. They're probably no more than 1.1 millimeter across. Also the rock has some interesting patterns in it, and there's still a bit of that orange lichen around, so I think this is going to make quite a nice composition, and it'll also make for a pretty nice 3D model. Let me shoot it before the next wave of sunlight arrives and creates dark shadows. Just look at that gorgeous little fern, tiny, total height maybe 5 or 6 centimeters, growing in a little crack in the rock, where the rock is the background. And I think in this case shallow depth of field is going to be working in my favor, so I'll probably shoot it at about I don't know, about f5.6, maybe focus stack just 1 or 2 images to make sure that the fern is in focus, but I probably want the rock in the background to be not in focus. But I think it's going to make a nice image, a landscape in miniature. I think this rock is absolutely fascinating. Not only the colors of the lichen, but also the shapes of the rock. You can see how it was formed, probably by volcanic action, I would assume. I'm no expert, but yes, I love the patterns and the shapes in it. And over there you can actually see the little fern that I just took an image of as well. Unfortunately the sunlight is now a bit harsh. And just look at that gorgeous little flower hiding away there in a shady spot. The sun is now out and it's quite harsh, but this flower is in a shady spot, so I think the light will still be usable. Again, I'm going to have to stack it a bit, a couple of images, but I don't want the background in focus, so I'll probably end up stacking only 3 or 4 images at f5.6 or maybe f8. But yes, beautiful. This is a bit larger than the previous flowers. This is probably about 20 millimeters across, something like that. Here is me trying to shoot the lichen on the tree, but the sunlight is now very harsh. I'm just hoping that it's not going to be too harsh, but you can see the whole tree trunk is covered with this lichen all the way up, and the other trunk, there are actually 2 trunks. That this one is almost horizontal, but again also covered with a lichen. The trunk of a shepherd's tree, but it's absolutely covered by lichen. Almost no more bark exposed. It's actually quite beautiful, greyish, whitish lichen with a very fine pattern to it. So it's obviously, I don't think it's doing the plant any harm, because it seems to be quite healthy. They live in harmony. I think I'm going to end up cropping this image quite a bit. Too much, it's too busy around the edges. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to crop it into a square, maybe, just centering on the center lichen that has a darkish grey and then a lighter grey, and then towards the bottom, the piece towards the bottom is got a slight yellow tinge to it. So I think that'll make for an interesting image, specifically the very fine detail, the absolutely tiny detail. I'm glad I've got enough pixels that I can crop out that bit, because I can't really get much closer with the tripod to that image. A longer lens than 150mm would have been nice, but yes, that's what I've got, so I've got to make it work. Just look at this beautiful cactus, past flowering now in the fruit stage, very similar to the one that I photographed in the beginning of this video. And it's also got that aloe next to it. I think this particular clutch of cacti could probably be used as a very nice foreground subject. As you can see, just to the other side of it we've got some rocks, and on the left hand side as well there's some rocks, so maybe early morning or late afternoon. Actually, this is probably more early morning. This could be used for a sunrise photo shoot, with some beautiful clouds, some rocks as leading lines, this cactus with a very purplish burgundy colored seeds on it will make for something different than just the normal rocks we have in this area. Just look at this speckboom. Lots of flowers. They always flower towards the top of the plant, interestingly enough. Extremely fine little pink flowers, tiny, about 0.5 millimeter in diameter. But when there are thousands or hundreds of thousands of them, it actually makes the whole area beautiful. I wonder if you can hear all the insects. It's normally not this noisy around here. Well, I think this is pretty much it. Sun is getting too hot and too harsh. The light is getting too harsh, and the photographer is going to overheat just now. So thanks for watching this far, much appreciated. By now you'll know if I did manage to find some decent images, but I do hope so, and I do think so. And thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this episode, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. You can find more details about my photography and the equipment I use in the description below. Hope to see you in the next video. Much appreciated. Be safe and be happy. Good morning everyone, thanks for joining me again. I'm doing a bit of exploration this morning, just seeing if I can find any interesting compositions, specifically maybe some more abstract stuff. Also looking for some lichens and flowers like always. I'm mostly going to be shooting, I think, with my macro lens today. We had some rain recently, like you probably heard in one of the previous videos, and the Karoo is looking really great, so I'm hoping to find some interesting stuff for you today. Thanks for joining me on my little expedition. Let's see what we can find. really interesting. This is a lichen I haven't seen before. First of all, the color. All the lichens around here have very subdued light green or almost whitish colors, and this one is a far darker, almost olive green. So I'm not sure what species this is. I'll see if I can find out. If I do find out, I'll give it to you up in the corner of the screen. But yes, let's see. I'm gonna probably have to photo stack. Definitely have to photo stack. I'm using a 150mm Sigma macro lens here, so probably end up with about 10 to 15 images, I would guess. So let's take it and see if there's enough light. It's still relatively dark. The sun is not up yet. Not really much of a composition yet to be found. Can maybe try and use that crack on the right hand side, but I think I'm recording this more for the sake of the special lichen than trying to make an artistic landscape photo out of it. This lichen is the one that I normally see around here, but this particular specimen is quite nice. I really like the fact that it's the larger colony or the larger organism, and then right next to it, top left hand corner, there's a smaller one, and also right in the middle there's some interesting holes or dark patches in the structure. So I think this is worthwhile just taking a few photos and stacking it as well, specifically some very detailed cropped shots I think could actually work here. This is actually quite interesting. It looks like a piece of lichen as well, I suppose, but it's not growing on a rock as per usual. It's actually growing right on the ground. Now I've seen one of these before while wandering around these hills and mountains, but this is actually the first time it was in a position where I can actually take a photo of it. I think what I like is the nice contrast between the almost reddish and white colors of the lichen, and then that very dark little rock on the bottom right hand corner gives it some nice contrast. Again, I'm going to have to stack quite a few images, specifically if I also want the background in focus. So I think this will be at least 25 plus images. But let me take the photo before I get direct sunlight on it. That'll make the contrast too high. Now look at this amazing thing that I've actually found here. If you look carefully, you will see it's like a slight indent in the rock, and it's got fine little lines that are arranged around the hole in the circle, well, basically in a circle around the hole. You can see them in focus now, bottom right hand, and then down into the hole, and then the other side. Now what this is, it's actually a creature that lived on the bottom of the lake, the inland lake in this part of the world millions of years ago. It's called the Zoophycos. Well, I hope my pronunciation is right, but I've seen these marks on the rocks a few times in the past, and I had no idea what it was. So the other day I went for a walk with my friend Gideon, who's a geologist, and he showed me this, and yeah, I have definitely learned something. Apparently these creatures lived in a tube in the mud, and then they would come out and forage around their hole, and that causes these lines. It's very fine lines in the mud, and then of course millions of years later it's now still there in the rock, and there are lots and lots of them around now. They're all a bit chipped up and pieces are missing. We've got lichens growing on this, but if you look carefully you will actually see the structure or the lines. What I'm going to try and do with this is I'm going to take probably 25 plus photos, stack them, and then see if I can create a 3D model, rotating 3D model, so that we can actually maybe bring out the height differences in the lines out a bit. Hopefully that'll work. Well, if it does work, you will see it just now. Another one, also a very nice sample of the Zoophycos, almost a round circle. The top end is missing, but what you can see in the middle of the image, you can very distinctly see the lines caused in the mud by this creature foraging for food. So I'm going to try this one as well. We'll see which one of the two works the best. This actually quite an interesting miniature rock formation, and the rocks sticking out of the ground almost vertically with a bit of lichen on them, and I've got a bit of soft light coming from the right hand side. So I'm doing a landscape shot, even though I have a macro lens on, because that's all that I have with me. I didn't bring my full bag. I just went for a quick stroll this morning, but I think this could be a usable image. Let's see if I stack it, if I can get something out of it that is worthwhile showing you. What I really like about this composition is the diagonal line that the stones form from bottom right towards top left. I think that is actually quite interesting. Even though it's all in miniature, I think it actually is a worthwhile landscape. It just shows that you need to look down sometimes as well, and not just look for those wide vistas, because some days they're not there. Look at this beautiful rock with all the lichen, or the lichen growth on it, I should say. Nice contrast, light rock, darker background. Just to the top left there's a bush with tiny little seeds on it. But what I like is the side light specifically, early morning side light on it, which gives nice contrast, bit of depth of field to the lichen on the rock. So again, I'm going to stack this, and I will most likely try it as a 3D as well, or at least portion of it. If you have a complete object on a background that's quite far away, 3D doesn't work that well because the edges aren't that nice. But if the object fills the complete frame, then the 3D really works. So I might end up cropping this a bit and then making a 3D out of that. Let's see how it works out. Unfortunately, the sun just came out behind a cloud, so now the contrast might be too high, but I'll still give it a shot. I did capture a few images, but yes, the light's now very harsh, unfortunately. But I know where this rock is. If it doesn't work out, I can always come back in the not so far away future. Well, I think that's it for today, everyone. The sun has just gone behind a cloud, and it could almost be a real landscape shoot situation. I'll have a look, but I think as far as the macro work is concerned, I found a few interesting subjects. I hope those images worked out, especially the 3D images that I was hoping to, or I am hoping to create using those stacks. If they did work out, you would have seen them by now. Also, thanks to my friend Gideon for pointing out those marks in the rocks to me and explaining what they were. I really learned a lot, and I think I need to tap into his knowledge more in the future, so you might hear more references to him in some of my future videos. Thanks for joining me. Please subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. If you click the bell next to the subscribe button, you will be notified of any new videos that I release. If you're interested in any of my work, or you want to contact me or purchase some prints or something, please have a look in the description below. I will have links there to places where you can look at my work, where you can purchase my work, and my email address is also there if you want to contact me. Otherwise, just leave a comment down below. Thanks for joining me today. Have a great day. Stay safe, stay happy. Till next time. Cheerio. Good morning everyone, I hope you can see me. It's still quite dark. Welcome back to my channel. Yes, it's dark, even though it's about 45 minutes past sunrise. There's no sign of the sun, very thick clouds, which is rather unusual. It's also quite chilly, about 16 degrees with a bit of wind, which I think comes straight from the ocean. That is about 70 kilometers away. I'm not planning on a sunrise obviously this morning, but what I am planning on doing is exploring a new area. Where I am at the moment, I haven't explored this area before. I am taking along a macro lens because I can see that there are lots of interesting macro subjects here which are perfect to shoot when the light is quite soft like this. Mostly rocks, rock formations, lots of lichen, different colors on both the trees and the rocks. And what else we'll find, who knows, maybe the odd little wildflower. Let's see what we can find today. Thanks for joining me, much appreciated, and let's go hunt for some interesting images. Well, here we have the first composition of the morning. Tiny bone fragment actually lying on the ground. What I like about it is the contrast between the white sun-baked bone and then the reddish sand, which is actually quite interesting. I've got no idea where the bone comes from. It's very weathered, so it's quite old. It's probably from some small mammal. I might actually take it home and stick it under the microscope and have a look to see if I can get some even finer detail at higher magnifications. But yes, good start to the morning, and be a focus stack image, shooting it at f14, and I need about 5 images I think to get the whole thing in focus. Nice find, very different. Here we have the images captured. As you can see, lots of very fine detail, tiny little cracks on the surface of this piece of bone. I think the texture is really interesting. Also the shape, the line specifically at the top, it moves from the right hand to the left hand, and then it's got that little curved semicircle at the top that kind of throws the eye back into the image. But primarily I think the interesting thing here is the texture, the very fine cracks. Nice capture, maybe not a portfolio shot, but something worthwhile keeping and capturing. Well, here I found a nice piece of very delicate lichen. Very, very fine texture. Normally it's they have like curly bits that stick up. This is totally flat on the rock. So I'm going to try and capture this. At 1:1 it's still very fine. You actually need a better than a 1:1 macro, maybe something like my MPE-65, the Canon lens. It'll go at 5:1. But I'll take this photo. At least I've got enough megapixels. Maybe end up cropping it a bit. But I think it's a nice find. I will be doing a focus stack with it. Probably need about 4 or 5 images. Let's see what we can do. Okay, we'll be shooting at f14, 2-second exposures. Probably need about 5 of them for the depth of field. Using manual focus with a focus assist on the Sony works quite well. You can see exactly what part of the image is in focus. Even in relatively low light, that works quite well. Okay, that should do it. Hopefully once I get this in the computer, it's something that is really beautiful. Well, here we have the image after I've stacked it. As you can see, very fine detail, tiny little shell type structures. Quite interesting. From a distance it almost looks like sandpaper, but it's actually quite beautiful. And they seem to cover quite a few rocks around here. I think when they get wet, it'll be interesting to see, because they'll normally swell up a bit and change the color, normally to a more greenish color. But interesting capture. Ended up stacking 5 images in Helicon focus. I've now climbed up a rocky ridge, not very high, probably elevation gain of about 50 meters or so, but I found a rather interesting long rock formation here that actually sticks out of the ground, probably volcanic. Of course there's some interesting lichen on it that I will shoot, but I think towards the middle of winter when the sun has moved. This might be a nice location for a sunrise shoot, landscape shot. It's also a very nice tree or two here. That'll add to the interest and some foreground interest. But talking about foreground interest, there must be some predator animal around here. Lots of bones on the ground, lots of pieces of fur, different species. So something is catching something around here. The main plan here is not to be on the menu for today, but it's probably a small predator like a jackal or something. So I'll just keep an eye out. Maybe it's denners around here. That would be interesting. Well, I found some more interesting lichens, at least 3 different species here. One is, it almost looks like something that should come out of the ocean growth, tiny little shells almost. And then there's a very orangey yellow one that sits flat on the rock. And then I've also seen the normal one that I've seen even on my property, the one with curly leaves. So I'll shoot those. They're all here on this rock formation that I just mentioned. And there's a very definite smell here of an animal. So I'm pretty sure I'll explore just now, but maybe there's somewhere on this rocky ridge there's a den or a jackal den or something like that. I quite like this lichen that's growing here on the rock. It's a very different from the normal lichens. As you can see, it's got tiny little round bubbles almost reminds me of shells. This is more something that you would see in a tide pool. But yes, we're 70 kilometers away from the ocean, so maybe this was a tide pool millions of years ago. I ended up stacking 9 images to get this final result. You see a beautiful contrast between the grayish white shells and the little black pieces in it. Not sure what is causing the black. I also just lifted changed the color temperature a bit. It was a bit cold, so the colors on the rocks behind it is now what I saw with my eyes. Quite happy with the image. Maybe it deserves also higher magnification. Maybe I'll try and shoot this at 5 times magnification sometime in the future. But overall, a nice image of an interesting subject. This is a rather unusually colorful lichen. Don't think I've seen one quite this color before. I've seen a reddish brown one, but those have a slight rough texture. This one is very smooth. It's almost like it's part of the rock, but if you look carefully you see it's not a mineral, it's something that grows on the rock. I'll be doing probably about 6 or 7 image focus stack here, shooting at f14 around about 1.5 seconds. Quite an interesting composition I found. I'm shooting it with a macro lens, but it's almost not a macro image. I'm quite far away. I'm probably about 2 meters away from this tiny little dead tree. What I like about the composition is I've got those rocks in the foreground that anchor the image. Yeah, we're actually shooting at 16 by 9, so the final image will be a bit wider. So we'll see more of that. And then we've got this tree that actually has got a lot of character on it. It's got a very dark bark. And it bends over. It's obviously dead, or it appears to be dead. Bends over. It's like collapsed over onto the ground behind it, but it's still kind of trying to stay upright. Also from the bottom left corner, we've got all those dead roots that make a nice leading line onto the main trunk, that then guide your eye up towards the top of the image and then down again towards the right. Overall, quite an interesting image. Tiny. The whole tree is probably about 20 centimeters high, not even, maybe 18 centimeters, so it's relatively small. I'm going to have to shoot a focus stack here, but I think it'll be worthwhile. I'll shoot it, so I definitely don't want the background in focus. There's a big rock on the back. I don't want that in focus, so I'll make sure that I don't include the images in the focus stack where that is in focus. But let's see what we can capture here. The first image I shot here, I used f14, but I then realized that maybe I'm getting too much of the background into focus. So I'm going to do another focus stack, same composition, but I'll shoot it at f2.8 to make sure that even the deepest focus that I do on the back of the tree doesn't actually include the rocks in the back. Let's see if this works. Here is the image that I stacked after I stacked it using the f2.8 version of the sequence that I shot. I'm particularly happy with the composition. I love the miniature tree. I love the leading line from the bottom left-hand corner that takes you into the image, then up the tree then takes you down on the other side on a curve. The tiny little rock in the foreground is also a bonus, and I'm quite happy that I managed to exclude the background by not having it in focus, specifically the rock towards the right. I could maybe in the future try another shot at this by moving slightly right and excluding that rock completely. But as it is, I'm quite happy with the image, and I'm glad I made the effort to shoot it twice. Well, here we have another fascinating growth. Probably some lichen, I would assume. Looks like one. I've never seen this one before. It's slightly dusty. There's a bit of dirt on it. I suppose that's natural. But it's got a very fine texture, and I almost didn't see it because it's quite well camouflaged on the rock. I'm looking around to see if I can find a composition here, but there's nothing really that screams out at me. So I think I'm simply going to use this where I've got the line coming from the bottom right that does a curve, does a half circle towards the center and then down again towards the left hand side, or alternatively from the left hand side you've got the dark gray. It goes to the top and then forms a half circle towards the bottom. But I think here the main interest is the actual texture on the lichen. I'll have to focus stack this. I'll shoot it at f14 probably, or maybe f11 I think, for sharpness, and then probably need about 7 or 8 shots to get the focus right. Here we have the image as stacked. Initially the original image, the full size. I'll just show you the slightly zoomed in version as well. I really do like the composition, the half circle that starts bottom right and ends up in the middle, and then there's another circle mimicking on the left hand side. The very fine texture, which almost looks like tiny little hairs, also make the image quite interesting. The colors are interesting as well. The grayish growth, and then the rock behind it that is a slightly orangey, rusty color. As you can see here, here's the more zoomed in version, showing you just some more detail of the actual lichen growing. Interesting plant, or interesting in the form of life, and I enjoyed the image. Even the composition worked. I normally struggle with these abstract compositions. Here's another rock formation I quite like. I might have to move around a bit to see how best to use it in a composition, but I've never been able to resist a nice rock formation. You can probably hear in the background the birds. Just being out here in nature, even though I'm not producing any major images this morning, is just absolutely beautiful on this cloudy day. Okay, here I am back at home, and as promised I'm going to show you how I process my macro images, specifically how I do the focus stacking, and how I also create the 3D video clips that I sometimes use. What I've done here, I've imported the raw files into Lightroom, and I've selected one of the images specifically that I want to show you how to process it. I selected this image specifically because I believe it'll work well as a 3D object as well. Normally, if it's just a normal still image that I'm interested in, I would actually process the image directly, directly in the stacking software. It'll read the raw files quite fine. Once you've done the stacking and you're happy with that, you can actually save it as a TIFF file, then import it into Lightroom or whatever your developing software is of choice, and then process it from there. But because I'm interested in creating a 3D video clip, it's important to first at least get the images so that the white balance is right, the colors are right, the histogram is right, and so on. Because once you've made the video clip, it's very difficult to do that. So what I've done with these images, I've selected them all, and on the very first image, what I do is I actually make sure the histogram's right. I changed the white balance a bit. It was a bit cold. I made sure the sharpening is right. There's no noise, nothing, no issues. Once I've done that on one image, because the images are basically all the same, you only need to do it in one image. Then you go to sync, and I just basically synchronize the images. What that does is it applies those parameters to all of them. Once I've done that, it's as simple as actually exporting the files. I normally put them in their own folder, like LR1 in this case. I specifically export as TIFF, no compression, and color space not that important, but I normally use Adobe RGB. Once they've exported, you've now got your collection of TIFF files. I open the software that I use to stack. I use a software called Helicon Focus. Helicon Focus there are many different pieces of software that will do this. I've just been using this one for a very long time. Also for microscope photos, where often you would stack 200 or 300 images there, and this is quite fast and efficient. So what do you do here? You simply open the images. I go and select the folder where they are, and I select all my TIFF files. It'll then open these files. You'll see on the right hand side it shows you the list of files, and it'll show you the first file here. You can actually step through the files and have a look at them. I'll show you later on when we do the stack with that tiny little tree, that sometimes you don't want to stack all the images. In that case, I only want the images that doesn't include the background. But in this case, I'm happy to stack all the images. You've got a couple of different methods that you can use for stacking. Method A, B, and C. One uses a weighted average. Then the default is a depth map. I prefer the depth map. Simply, first of all, it gives me great results. But also, I think it works better for the 3D image because it uses that depth map to create the 3D image. And then there's a pyramid as well, very similar. You can change some of the parameters here, like how much smoothing you want, the radius, that it'll actually look at the individual pixels. I find the defaults work pretty well. Once you're happy with this, it's as simple as actually saying render. Now, what it'll do here in the left-hand window, it actually shows you the image that it's selected, the specific image that it is on at that moment. It'll step through the images. As you can see, they go out of focus. Once it's stepped through them, it'll actually build a map, a mask, and then it'll actually stack those images according to the mask. As you can see, here's the stacked image now, compared to, let's look at some of the images on the left-hand side. That one, for example, there's a lot out of focus. Only the very background, some of the rocks are in focus, but you can see the stacked image is fine. You can do some retouching here. You can play with the edges. Sometimes you want to get rid of tiny artifacts. For images like these, that's very seldom necessary. You can also add some text, some descriptions. That would be nice if you want to circle something and say, that's the nervous system of the insect or something like that. Normally, all I do at this point is I would actually save the image. First of all, I'll save a TIFF file. It actually gives a name. It gives you a date, and more importantly, it gives you those parameters that it was created with, the radius and the smoothing and so on. So I think it's nice to keep those parameters as part of the file name. It's nice for future reference. So simple as saving the file. It takes a little while. It's quite a large file. As you would know, TIFF files are quite huge. These TIFF files would be about 240, 250 meg, something like that. Once it is saved, we can then look at the 3D side of it. A couple of different things you can do. You can create animations and depth maps and so on. But what I'm really interested in is the 3D model that will export. What it does is it uses the data that it's gathered while creating the stack, and it uses that to create a model that it can actually twist in real time. Normally quite a beautiful result, like in this case. It actually shows you so much 3D depth. It's beautiful. You can change the zoom. You can zoom in and out of the image. You can change how fast it rotates it. You can change rotation angle. You can also enhance the depth, or you just keep it by the default of about 30, 35, I think gives good results. Once you've done all that, you can also select the quality. I normally go for high quality. Highest quality and high quality, even at 4K video, it's not much difference. You can then go and save the file. Now the important thing here is you can select the resolution. Obviously, I want to save it at 4K, at nice high resolution. And you can save it in stereo if you want to create a stereo type effect. I'm not really interested in that in this particular. And I want to save the video. I just don't want to save the snapshot. I want to save the video. Now here you can say how many revolutions it must do. and frames per second. So what I do is I would normally put that on the frames per second on 25 or 24, depending on what I normally use. And I would want more than one revolution. You can always cut the video later. I would probably use 5 revolutions. Then it'll show you the same repeating revolutions in a loop. So let's save it. And again, it'll ask you where you want to save it. I would normally just, as a matter of interest, save it with the rest of the images, so at least you know where to find them. So I would stick them in the 3D folder and save it. It'll now actually create the video, build the video. You'll see the actual video animation now stops, and it'll create a video that is hopefully usable. You can then import it into your editing software, Adobe Premiere, or I use DaVinci Studio, and you can then integrate it into your main video. The next image I want to process is the one of the little tree, specifically the version that I shot at f2.8, because I want to make sure that I do not get the background into focus. So what I've done here in Lightroom, I've selected the 9 images that I shot in that sequence, and I've got the first one selected. The first image is shown. Overall, the image seems quite fine. Only thing I really need to do is maybe the histogram is a bit far to the left, so I'm just moving it slightly to the right, making sure that it's a nice even exposure. White balance seems to be fine, everything else seems to be fine, so I'll just synchronize that slight change to all the other images, and then I will process them and create a TIFF files like in the previous image. To save time, I've already done that. Okay, then in Helicon Focus, what I'll do is I'm going to open those 9 files, specifically the TIFFs that I've just generated. There they are. Select all 9 of them and open them up. It's going to take a few seconds because those are quite huge files, being TIFF files. And what you'll see is the first file is selected here. You see, as I step through the files, you'll see the focus will slightly move back. The second file, the focus is a bit further back. The next one, it's even further back. What I want to do is I want to make sure I'm not selecting any files where the focus is already too far back. I just want to get the very back of the tree in focus and nothing more than that. It appears that I could probably go one more file. Let's just see what that looks like. No. This is too far already. I can see that the rock in the back's already in focus. What I'm going to do is all the files from here I'm going to deselect, so we won't be using them in this particular stack. I'll again use the depth map method, and I'm just going to render these files. See how quickly it renders them. It creates the mask, and there's the final image, which seems to be quite fine. The background is nicely out of focus. The leading lines are fine. The foreground is absolutely crisp, and so is the tree itself. So all I need to do, I'm not going to try and do this one 3D. Subjects like trees and so on don't work very well in 3D unless you take photos from the backside as well. So I'm just going to save a TIFF file for this, in case I want to reprocess or do some more processing in Lightroom maybe. One more file that I think that I need to do, I would like to do, is one of the ones where the lichens are on one of those rocks. So what I'm going to do is I'm just cleaning up Helicon, and then I'm going to select again in Lightroom, see which files I'm looking at. I'm specifically interested in this set. I think this is quite a nice image as well, and this thing will also work quite well in 3D. Again, very little to be done, I think. Just make sure that the histogram is nice and evenly spread. No need to sharpen any further. The noise reduction seems to be fine. I will again sync these images and then just export them as TIFF files again. Once the export is complete, I will pull them into, or open them up into Helicon again. Here they are. Select all the files, open them up. In this case, I'm not really interested in, or not worried about the depth of field going all the way to the back, so I'm just going to stack all the files using the normal depth map method again. Works well. You'll see left-hand side is the current image that is in use, and the right-hand side is the result. It's slowly but surely creating a map, and as it goes along, it uses this map to create a mask, and once it's got the mask, it'll then actually combine the images into one final TIFF file, or one final image. It can then be saved as a TIFF file. It's quite busy. These are 42 megapixel images, so takes quite a while to process them, and being TIFF files as well, they're about 245 meg odd each. But the map is almost complete. It'll now do the reverse building of the mask. You can see the mask, the first level is done. It's running through the levels, still showing the original image on the left hand side as it uses them. And there's the product, nice and sharp all the way through. I'm going to just save that as a TIFF for later processing. And once the save is complete, I'm going to render this, create a 3D image, which I think would be quite a nice one, because there's quite a bit of depth. Because towards the bottom left, the rock actually moves away from the camera. It's further away from the camera, so that should be quite interesting. Let's have a look at what it looks like in 3D. Absolutely beautiful. Beautiful 3D image. I'm happy with this. I'm not going to change any of the parameters. I think it is perfect as it is, so I'm going to just save it as a video. 4K video, I'll probably want about 5 loops, and I want 25 frames per second. That should be fine. And then what I'll do is I'm going to save this, and once it is saved, the saving part is not very interesting. I will show you the final result. Okay, the final image that I want to actually edit here and stack is the one with the yellow lichen, the very smooth one. It's also quite interesting being on the edge of a rock. So I'm also going to try 3D on here. I'm not sure how effective it will be, but it's worth a try. Little to be done to the image out of the camera. Again, slightly underexposed. I will just make sure it's exposed using the full dynamic range. I don't think I'm going to even touch the yellow. I was tempted to make the yellow a bit lighter, but I think that's fine. Nothing else I need to do in Lightroom at this point. So synchronize the files, and then I'll export them as TIFF files so that I can import them into Helicon Focus. Okay, I'm not going to actually export them. I've already done that. It takes a bit long for the purposes of this. So in Helicon Focus, I'm going to open those images. Where are they? There they are. All of them. Open them up. Again, 9 images. I seem to be consistent in stacking in 9. It's not on purpose. I just normally work the scene from front to back, trying to get everything into focus. I think I'm going to just do the normal stacking here. Nothing special needed. I'm a bit worried about the bottom left-hand corner. It's quite dark, but maybe we don't really need to lighten it up. I can always maybe do that later in Lightroom for the normal image, but it's too late to do anything now for that in terms of the video, in terms of the 3D video. But I think it'll be fine if it's dark like that. Let's render it, see what it looks like. Left hand side again, the original image, you can see as it's stepping through them, and on the right hand it's building the depth map. Different focuses are different shades of black, grey to white. It's reached the bottom one. Now it's busy building the mask. The mask is done. There's the stacked image. Beautiful. And there's actually quite a bit of detail in the bottom left-hand corner there. I think that's quite pretty. So I think nothing else needs to be done here. I'm not going to try and retouch the image. I'm just going to save it as a TIFF. Using the default file name is fine. In case I want to later edit that in Lightroom or Photoshop or anything else. Once this save is complete, I'm going to do the 3D. We'll see what the 3D model looks like. It might be interesting with quite a large difference between the top right-hand corner and the bottom left-hand corner. Here comes the 3D model. Oh, and that's actually quite pretty. Look at all the detail that is visible both on the lichen and on the rocks in what is the relatively dark bit. It's quite pretty. So save the file as a TIFF file. That I've already done. So I'm going to save the video again, 4K video. Give it at least 5 loops in the video, just for interest sake. So 7.5 and 25 frames per second works for me. It does save it in a MP4 format. You can select other formats. Well, you can't really select other formats, but you can convert to other formats if needed. So there it is. Simple. Stacking is very easy with Helicon Focus. Of course, you can do it with layer masks in Photoshop as well. But this is far more efficient. Plus, it gives you the ability to do the 3D. I've tried the stacking with masks for some of my microscope photos, but even with a 64 or 128 gig machine, when you get to about 100 images, there's no way you can actually stack them in Photoshop. You just run out of memory. It gets so slow it's not usable, whereas Helicon handles it quite nicely. Not a problem. Well, I think that's pretty much it for this morning. I had quite an interesting little expedition here, but I can hear breakfast calling. I managed to find quite a few compositions I think that would be useful in the future with better light. I'm glad I came to explore this area. It's probably about 2 kilometers away from where I normally shoot, or where I should say where I do a lot of my shooting. But very different vegetation, and the rock formations are also a bit different. So it's definitely worthwhile coming back here. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for joining me on the adventure. Hope you enjoyed the images. If you did enjoy the video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already. Look in the description below for a link to my website and also to my Facebook page. And if you're interested in prints of any of my images, please contact me direct. I do limited edition serialized signed prints, fine art prints. Thanks for joining me. Have a great day and hope to see you soon. Cheerio.